Good morning, Knicks Nation. It's last of the morning. It's almost noontime here in Central Florida, but today is Monday, the 15th day of September 2025. I hope you're all safe and healthy. I hope you enjoyed your weekend and that you had a safe weekend and a healthy one. Blessings upon those that work in health, trying their best to save lives with first responders, those also that pick up garbage for us to keep our places clean, and those that make deliveries for our convenience. Double blessings on the men and women that are out here trying to help rescue, deliver, and recover teenagers and children that are victims of child molestation and pedophilia. Those that are helping the people that are victims of prostitution, child prostitution, pornography, child pornography, human trafficking, and sex slavery. Double curses on all the perpetrators, the profiteers, and the perverts that cause the demands of these industries to exist. Finally, double blessings on the homeless. More than 700,000 men, women, children, families, and senior citizens homeless, and military veterans homeless in the United States of America. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. Today, I'd like to discuss what we discussed a little bit in my live stream yesterday. Who is the fifth starter for the New York Knicks? Now, I want to say off the top, it doesn't matter what you and I think about who the fifth starter would be. I get a lot of comments from people about what they think. And most of it is not based on statistics. Most of it's not based on win-loss totals. It's just based on feeling and what they feel. In the NBA, this is not high school. This is not college. This is the league. And you got to base it on wins. At the end of the day, winning is what matters. That's all that matters. Everything else don't matter. How many All-NBAs you got, how many All-Stars you got, it don't matter. What does matter is wins. Okay? Now, there are certain things that can translate into wins, like having an MVP on your team. That's an MVP, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or having all-NBA players on your team like the Knicks do, like Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. But that's not the end object. The end object is the win, okay? So that's the criteria I use. Now, and what I used to like about Tibbs is that's how he based on what he thought was going to win. Whether right or wrong, that's how he did it. I do not know. I have no idea what the Mike Brown player looks like. What the typical Mike Brown player is, I don't know. But I do know that Mike Brown knows and understands that the Knicks front office is made the change to him to win. And the Knicks just come out of the Eastern Conference Finals. So they had a winning season. Therefore, with his hiring, the Knicks are looking now for the finals. They expect to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And yes, unfortunately, it would be a disappointment with this team if they did not get to the Eastern Conference Finals. If they lost in the second round, it would be a disappointing season. Though it might be a successful season in terms of wins and losses. It would be a disappointing season. So this team is expected to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then the hope is, see, there's an expectation and there's a hope. You can't guarantee somebody's going to the finals. The ball has to bounce your way. So the hope is they go to the finals, okay? So that's the hope. And now, so therefore, no matter how Mike Brown sets his criteria, these are the results he knows he has to have. So I started looking at the three real legit options for the fifth starter. Four of the starters are set in stone, okay? No matter what some knuckleheads talk about with respect to Mikal Bridges, I ignore that. It's stupid. Mikal Bridges is a starter. OG Anunoby is a starter. Karl-Anthony Towns is a starter. And Jalen Brunson's a starter. You got four starters. Now, for most of Tom Thibodeau's tenure, once they got Josh Hart, he was a starter, okay? So you got to consider him. Then there's Mitchell Robinson, who is very inconsistent in terms of his Availability. I'm Mitch Rob Hive. I love Mitch Rob. I don't ever talk about trading Mitch Rob like a lot of Knicks fans do, because that's the default for some of y'all. Trade, okay? No. But I'm willing to give him as much rope as he needs and play him the right way to get the most out of him. I also happen to believe Mitch Rob wants this for himself. After the interview he did on the Roommates channel, he showed that. This is what he also wants. So the combination of him desiring to earn his money and help the Knicks win and stay on the floor, and the Knicks wanting him to help them win, they're going to have to come up with a strategy that keeps him on the floor. And that plays a role here also. So when we're looking at, I'm going to be looking at some key stats. Plus minus is the big one. 3-point percentage for Deuce and Josh, but for Mitch Rob would be offensive rebounding. And then, of course, there is the on-court, off-court effect. When they're on the court, how much better is the team when they're off the court than when they're off the court, okay? Because that's also important in winning, right? So let's take a look. So for Deuce, when Deuce plus minus is at least +1, that means the Knicks were at least 1 point better with Deuce on the floor than when he's not on the floor. And that happened in 37 games this past season. Deuce played a total of 64 games. Remember, he had injury. So he played a total of 64 games this past year. But 37 of those games, he was plus. They're 27-10 when Deuce is plus. This past season, again, and with Mitchell Robinson, I had to use multiple seasons because there ain't enough games, really, right? But with Mitchell Robinson, when he's plus minus, which he's only played 17 games this past season, that's not a good, to me, a really good sample size, but that's all we got. So with Mitchell Robinson, he played 17 games. He was plus on the plus minus in 16 of those games, and they were 15-1. Okay, 15-1. That's tantalizing. That's 94% winning percentage. Okay, but again, a limited sample size. So you can understand if Mike Brown wanted to start Mitchell Robinson. Okay, then Josh Hart. Josh Hart was plus minus +1 or more, which means the team was at least 1 point better than an opponent when he played. They were 41-3. So that speaks to two things. Number one, Josh Hart's available. We all know that. He's available. And number two, when he does play, the boy plays. We win a lot of those games. Okay? A lot of those games. Okay? That's not the whole story, but that's a big story. So with this, just looking at this, I would really favor playing Deuce and Josh more minutes and limiting Mitch Rob's minutes, because if he's that effective in limited time and you want him to play, I might not start him. I might have him coming off the bench. I might start either Deuce or Josh. Okay? Let's look at some other criteria, though. With Deuce, whenever he gets at least 5 3-point attempts in a game, whenever he gets at least 5 3-point attempts, okay? That's attempts. That's not makes. That's attempts. When he gets to shoot at least 5 3-pointers in a game, the Knicks are 30-20, which is a 60% winning percentage. Not bad, not great, but not bad. Not bad at all. Not great. Josh Hart, which we know Mitch Rob don't take no threes, so we ain't counting him here. We're going to use offensive rebounds with Mitch Rob. But with Josh Hart, when he gets 5 or more 3-point attempts per game, okay, the Knicks are 15-14. And of course, Mitch Rob don't shoot threes. So with Mitch Rob, what I did is I used offensive rebounds, right? So when Mitch Rob gets 4 or more offensive rebounds in a game, they were 11-7. Again, that's not bad, but that's not a big jump. Deuce would win that contest. So if you want a guy that, and of course, Deuce is going to play defense, right? All three of these guys, they're going to play high-level NBA defense, all three of them. But if you're talking about guys that's going to get spot-up threes, Deuce is that guy, okay, out of those. Shamet with Deuce together was dynamite. I'm not going into that, but Shamet and Deuce was dynamite. Shamet was dynamite with all three of these dudes. He seemed to not do as well with Brunson. Neither did Deuce, actually. Brunson, of course, played a lot with Hart, and so Hart excelled with Brunson. Deuce was better without Brunson. He was good with Brunson, but he was better with Shamet. Okay, so that's another criteria. But in this particular contest, if we're talking about 5 or more threes a game, which in the league, okay, your spot-up shooter, because they got to cover Cat, they got to cover Bridges, they got to cover Brunson. Okay, so in that case, you want Deuce out there, because if he gets at least 5, they're going to score. They're going to win. They're going to win. That's the key thing we're talking about here. They're going to win a lot more when Deuce gets at least 5 3-point attempts per game. Okay, when Deuce shoots 40% or more from 3, when he shoots at least 40%, which happened last year again, 27 times. He shot 40% or more. So, that's league average is about 36. So when you're getting a nice 40% percentage, nice 40% clip from your 3-point spot up shooter, you're doing really good, right? So with Deuce, when they got 40% or more shooting from him, they were 22-5. That's freaking tremendous. Okay? So that's really good. With Josh, when he shot, which, let's take a look at Josh, to be fair about it. When Josh shoots 40% or more from 3, let's take a look. When Josh shoots, and I didn't write all this stuff I found down, but I wrote down the key stuff. But when Josh shoots 40% or more, which he did 29 times this past season, 40% or more from 3, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Josh shot 40% or more from 3 29 times. They were 21-8. Now, if that's the case, you got to now decide who's going to be more consistent. So Josh last year appeared in 77 games, which is available. That's straight availability right there. He'll never be accepted in the Amblin School because he's available. Okay, so out of those 77 games, he shot 40% or more 29 times. And for the season, he shoot last year from 3, 33%. So he's not the best 3-point shooter of the 3, obviously. Deuce is. So Deuce shot last year on his 64 games that he played. Deuce shot 37% from 3. His and then his field goal percentage is 41, but yes, 37, 81 from the free throw line. Josh also was high percentage from the 3-point line, free throw line, excuse me. And so both of them are good in that regard. So that was big. Now, the important thing to me was plus minus in terms of when they're on the floor, period. When they're on the floor, how many games? For 64 for Deuce, 77 for Josh Hart, and of course only 17 games for Mitchell Robinson, right? But when they're on the floor, both in the regular season and the playoffs, and this stat is more of a what have you done for me lately? So in other words, I didn't have to go back and look at several years for this, just last year. Okay, I want to see what the last year, what have you done for me lately as far as what is your effect on winning when you're on the floor last year? Okay, so for Josh, when he's on the floor during the course of the season, the Knicks were -2. When he's on the floor for the playoffs, it was even. He was 0. Didn't add, didn't subtract, it was even. Mitchell Robinson, when he was on the floor for the Knicks this past season, during the regular season, which wasn't a lot for him, they were +3. But the important thing is when Mitch Rob was on the floor for the Knicks in the playoffs, they were +9. So what does that say? And I think we all kind of feel this just from his past history against Cleveland, against Boston, against the, Philly in the playoffs. He's a monster in the playoffs. Okay? So what does that say to me? It says, listen, I want to make sure this guy is healthy for the playoffs. which means I probably want to manage his minutes very tightly during the course of the year to make sure he's available for the playoffs. Let's look at Deuce. Last year, in his 64 games, when he's on the floor, the Knicks are 6 points better than their opponent, +6. In the playoffs, he's +11. I want to tell you something. I'm looking, and all of this I get from Basketball Reference. I'm looking at this and I'm like, in terms of the number of ways the Knicks win games, like if they beat you in rebounding, if they beat you in defensive rating, if they beat you in shooting, Deuce is involved with more of that than anybody else. Okay, as far as these three guys. He's more involved with winning. He produces a lot of W's for the Knicks. So, if I'm looking at overall winning, I'm going to start Deuce. Okay? If I'm looking at taking a risk and trying to get in a rhythm and hope that it carries over, I'm looking at Mitchell Robinson. Because although obviously his availability is limited, but if I'm feeling like, if I'm Brown and I'm feeling like if I can give this guy 30 games, 25 minutes a game, maybe we can get in a nice rhythm, I might look at him. And in fact, that's what Ian Begley stated was the reason they signed Gershon Yabusele to start Mitchell Robinson. But the important caveat to that, very important, they had not yet hired Mike Brown. And it was very similar to when Tom Thibodeau came. The Knicks drafted Obi Toppin with the intention of starting him. They intended that spring to trade Julius Randle. But then in July, Tom Thibodeau was hired, and he ain't have that thought process. His process was, I'm going to ride Juju. I'm going to help him. And Juju became All-NBA, right? So the Leon and them had an idea in drafting Obi Toppin, number 8 overall, to start him. But that wasn't Tom Thibodeau's idea. Well, this spring, Leon and them said, well, we're going to probably start Mitchell Robinson. So we're going to have Yabusele come off the bench because he could play 4 if you want to move Cat to the 5 when Robinson sits, and he can play 5 in small ball. That's why they signed him, according to Ian Begley. But that was before Mike Brown. So I don't know how Mike Brown feels about that. So we don't really know until we see the first preseason game, especially though the last preseason game when the roster is going to be set against Charlotte. That's when you want to pay attention, because against Charlotte, that's the last preseason game. I think they got 5 preseason games. That's the 5th one. They would have had to have their cuts in by that. So that last preseason game, you're going to see what Mike Brown's thinking, what he's looking at. You're going to see that. He's not going to go into that last preseason game and not know what the hell he wants. He's going to know, okay? So now you got to decide, okay, if looking at stats and W's, now with Josh, this is the thing. Josh's biggest stat, and this is also significant. Josh's biggest stat was when he plays at least 30 minutes a game. When he plays at least 30 minutes a game, the Knicks are 48-24, which is, again, that's not bad. That's like 60%. It's not like you know this year when we're talking about a possible 60-win team, right? Then you're really talking about a percentage of winning that's in the 700 and change, right? So it's not bad, but this is the thing. You can't always tell how Josh is going to shoot the ball. You can't always tell how many rebounds he's going to get. But you always know he's going to be hustling. You always know he's going to be going full tilt. You can count on that. And it's always possible to bring him on to the bench and still get him 30 minutes. Okay? So you don't have to start him to get him 30 minutes. You can surely bring him off the bench and get him 30 minutes. So that's why I would lean toward Deuce in this scenario, which means your starting 5 would be Deuce with Brunson, Deuce at the 2. You would have Mikal Bridges at the 3, 6'6" string being, he'd be the 3, and he can guard 1 through 4. Then you have OG at the 4, who could also guard 1 through 5, and you'd have Karl-Anthony starting. That's how you would run it if you're going to start Deuce. If you're going to start Mitchell Robinson, you take out Deuce, you put in Mitch Rob, and you move Mikal to the 2. If you're going to start Josh Hart, do the same thing. You take out Mitch Rob, you put in Josh Hart, and you move Hart to the 2. Now, the thing about Hart being at the 2 is he's really not a 2. He's the size of a 2, but he plays like a 4. Okay? He plays like a 4. He can guard any 2 in the league. He can guard any 3 in the league. Okay? He can guard a lot of 4s too, but he gets a little bit of trouble with that because he is 6'4". But he gets rebounds against anybody. I've watched him at the games live myself. It's unbelievable how he explodes upward to the ball to get it in the crowd of people bigger than him and comes up with the basketball. That's Josh Hart. Okay? So, but like I said, in my view, Brown could get that out of him off the bench. He can get Josh Hart. He can get Josh Hart, vintage Josh Hart, 30 minutes a game off the bench. He don't have to start him. He can close with Josh Hart if he wants, but he don't have to start him. Okay? So that's the question. Do you want to take the risk and play Mitch Rob limited minutes and you look at the Twin Towers? Do you want to get a consistent W in several different ways of beating you? Deuce McBride. Do you want Charlie Hustle out there with Brunson? Because they play well together, very well. They've been together a long time. I don't know, that would be Josh. To me, if it was based on just what we're talking about here, not my opinion, and I am Deuce Hive, and I'm Mitch Rob Hive, and I'm Josh Hive, I would go with Deuce, just on the stats. 27 and 10, he could get at least 5 attempts a game from the 3. He is plus minus plus 6, and in the playoffs plus 11. The defense is stellar, and that's what the plus 6 and plus 11 tells you. How much is his defense affecting us coming out on top? That's the on-off, okay? There are 2 types of winning players on an on-off situation. One is a two-way player, like Deuce. So he's going to get you positive on both sides of the basketball. There's another that is so dominant on one side of the ball that it makes up for any deficiencies on the other side. That's Mitchell Robinson. So dominant in guarding the paint and on the defensive end of the floor, he ain't going to score a lot, but he's going to help you win a lot of games. Okay? And then, Karl-Anthony Towns is like that, but the flip side. So dominant offensively that he overcomes any defensive lapses he has because you get him the ball enough, nobody's going to stop him. And if he could play to a standstill or you put 4 players around him, like the Larry Brown, Allen Iverson formula, you put 4 defensive players around him, you're going to get some good results. Okay? So it depends on what you want to look at. I would probably look at Deuce first, Mitch Rob second, Josh third. That's how I would look at it. Because I'm going to get the production out of Mitchell Robinson and Josh, even if they're coming off the bench. With Mitchell Robinson, I'm going to reduce his potential for injury by having him come off the bench. And for Josh, I'm going to get pretty much what he can give me as a starter coming off the bench. But with Deuce, I can increase his winning, his effect on winning, playing him more minutes. So it's up to Brown. It's not up to me, right? It's not up to you and me. It's up to Mike Brown. But if he wants to win, if that's the goal, and I know it is with him, I'm probably starting Deuce. And I'm looking to get some more, at least play to a standstill defense from Karl-Anthony Towns. I'm not worried about Brunson as much. Yes, they're going to key on Brunson, but he's used to that. Brunson, if you watched him, if you've seen him, yes, they do take advantage of him on the low block. Teams will hunt him down, get him switched off on a bigger guy and try to take advantage of him. But he always fights to a standstill, and he's a fighter. When he goes, he's not like Juju was on a pick and roll, just back up and see what happens. He fights through his picks. He tries his best, okay? So I'm not worried about Brunson as much, though he is also a defensive liability at the end of the day. He's going to fight, okay? And then he's going to get his share, of course, we know, of charges and steals. So he's a high-level IQ player on the defensive end. I'm worried about Towns because he gets lost defensively. The game's moving so fast for him, he just gives up. I need him to learn how to do something a little better. This is where O'Connor and Brown come in. I think he can do it. I believe he has the ability to do it. That's what we got to find out. This is, to me, one of the biggest question marks coming into the season. Can Karl-Anthony Towns give us something? We don't need him to be Mitchell Robinson. Can he give us something, though, on defense? A little bit. Can he give us something? I've seen flashes of it. We've seen flashes of it during the course of the season. Now he's coming in the season losing weight, knees looking strong. Can he give me a little something on the defensive end? I already know the boy can be 25 pounds overweight, feeling gashes in his stomach, and still drop 25 on whoever in the NBA is trying to guard him. Nobody can guard him offensively. We're not worried about that. Can we get defense out of him? Because if we can, this team is going to be rough as hell. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be rough as hell. And we're hoping that that's the case. So, out of the three dudes, I would choose Deuce. But again, what I think don't mean a hill of beans. What does Mike Brown think? And we'll find out at the Charlotte game in preseason. Y'all enjoy your Monday. So.